Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for another TrendSpider live chart review. Our special guest tonight is none other than Mr. Theta Warrior. Theta, great to have you on this evening, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. It's great to be here. Thanks so much.
Awesome, man. It's awesome to have you. So let's jump right in here. Let's waste no time. We're going to start off with the major indices, the Qs, SPY, Bitcoin, Ethereum. Hit us with what you got.
Okay, awesome. So we'll jump right into it here with SPY. As you can see, we've broken below our trend line that we've pretty much been holding for, the better part of a year and a half or so. And we're now significantly below the 200 SMA. So, this is kind of like my long-term gauge of, sentiment in the market. Are we in an uptrend? Are we in a downtrend? To me, it looks like we may be starting to be, beginning to move into a lower phase of the market. We're going to, we've been selling off the last, couple months or so, and it looks to me like we may continue lower. Bear markets, they're a process. They're going to take time, right? Tops take time. Usually bottoms happen really quickly, but the topping process can take a little while. So one thing I like to do when I'm getting like a macro analysis is I like to zoom out. So this is going to be our daily chart, but I think it becomes even more clear when we look at the weekly. And this is kind of just a really quick analysis. I think that basically we broke out of this megaphone, this broadening formation, and we had a huge rip, as you might expect. And the measured move, coming out of a pattern like this is roughly like the size of the mouth, and that's just about what we got from where we broke out of. So the next thing you're going to say is, okay, well, where's the retest? Are we going to come back down and retest the top of that range? I think likely so. I think that's what's happening. And you can see that the kind of shorter term trend that we were just looking at on the daily has definitely been broken. We came back up and tried to reclaim it and were denied, and then we continued to roll over again. So my thinking is by the end of the year, we're going to probably visit this kind of 400 range. That seems to be like a good psychological number, 4,000 on the SPX. And that'll kind of line up with the top of this rising, trend line. As time goes on, this is going to get higher and higher and higher. So right now it's sitting around, 393, 395. But, in the next month or two, maybe 3 months, however long it takes to get down here, it could be around 400, 410 or so. That's not to say we might not, see a nice move up, maybe to 450 and then continue lower. But I think eventually we're going to need to retest the top of this range. And I actually think it'd be really constructive. So I think once we get down there, that's when we can start to look to really, be more aggressive buying the dip. If, things really go terrible, we do have the 200-week SMA right down here, which could also offer another level of support. You can see we held it perfectly right there in December of 2018. Cut through it during the COVID low, but in the past, the 200-week SMA is provided a good support level. So before we get to that, though, I'm looking for SPY to kind of visit that 400 range. The same thing we can see with the Qs. To me, just looks extended. This is a weekly chart. You can see this is our weekly trend line, which we've held, since 2015, multiple times. This was the COVID low right here. Really lines up nicely with that 200-week SMA. And look how high we are. Look how far we've extended. I mean, this is a huge move that the market's had. There needs to be some digestion. There needs to be some profit taking in there. So, if we revisited that trend line, that would be quite a bit farther to go. I think at the very least, we're going to need to revisit the 200-week SMA. So before I can get too bullish and, really back up the truck, I think that there's some repair that needs to happen on a lot of these charts. So my thinking is we do see more downside this year. And then, maybe towards the tail end of the year and into 2023, maybe we get a chance to move higher again. But, as traders, we can play the market in either direction. There's calls, there's puts, we can go long, we can go short. So we can make money whichever direction the market is going, right? I think that the key is to just keep an open mind. And, if the market wants to go lower, it wants to go lower. There's really no point in, trying to stop it or being upset about it or, continuing to try and buy the dip. you're just going to get hurt. You're going to lose money. If this market wants to go lower, why not just jump on the train? You can see here, and a lot of people have been pointing this out, maybe we have a head and shoulders that's starting to form on the Qs. Again, below that 200-day SMA, and MACD definitely moving to the lower, to the downside, which is a nice convergence. So to me, I would expect all of this to continue lower in the near to medium term.
Let me ask you, before we move any further, what would negate this for you? You seem pretty intent on this thing, on both of these major indices going lower. What would negate it?
I don't know, to be honest with you. it would take something serious, I think, from the Fed and earnings. I mean, what moves the markets is the Fed policy and earnings. We already know their hike schedule. We know kind of what's happened in the past when things like that has happened. Corporate earnings are not going to be what they were the last couple of years. We've seen a lot of companies do really well and just get crushed. The markets had really high expectations for a lot of these names. So my thinking is, the market's usually about 6 months forward looking. So I think that the market is kind of beginning to pre-sell off, all these rate hikes and these earnings coming in. Right now, we just have, a multiple compression. The market's trying to find, fair value. And in a lot of respects, it was probably overpriced for, the better part of last year. So I think that we're just, getting a classical correction here.
What is multiple? I'm sorry. What did you?
Multiple compression would just be like a PE
yeah.
coming in, price to earnings is, through the roof for some of these companies like Shopify, I don't know, had like, 1,000 PE or price to sales. I don't even think they had earnings. And then look at Shopify today. It's just been getting punished because it was just way too overbought. The PE, the PS was way too high up here. So the market's just regulating itself.
Got it. All right, cool.
So yeah, not to be a bear, but I'm just a realist, right? That's just the direction I think that we're headed.
Right. And like you said, got to keep an open mind, willing to change that opinion if the chart dictates.
Yeah. I mean, on the flip side, of course, there is the chance that this is just a big falling wedge, and we're going to move higher. Maybe we do that regardless, and we kind of move up to that, again, 450 range and then continue down. Anything can happen.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in the chart itself, what would you need to see? I know we were talking about kind of more fundamental stuff, but in the chart itself, do you need to see price get above that downtrend, price get above the 200 SMA? Where do you become a bull? Just looking at the chart.
Sure. So definitely it's got to get above this downtrend line, and the 200 SMA, that would also be great. I think that's a good give you your bearings. That's what I'm trying to say. If the market's below the 200 SMA, you're in a downtrend. Above the 200 SMA, you're in an uptrend. It's kind of like a good rule of thumb, I think. So in order for us to get, in order for me to get bullish again, I would kind of need to see price, get above those two potentially, big resistance levels.
Got it. And how are you using MACD, just so we understand?
So MACD, just like simplifies a lot of the moving averages. I will throw them on, as need be. I look at the 8, the 21, the 50, and the 200. But, when you have them all on the chart, sometimes it can get a little busy. I think that the price is going to be the most important thing. So I pretty much toggle them on and off as need be. And I just use the MACD as kind of just a barometer of, all that information together, basically. So, MACD is definitely moving lower with the market, which makes sense, right? So what I would need to see in order to get bullish would be, a higher low, some type of divergence. The MACD is starting to move up, and then, price is following with that. I think that might be an interesting buy signal.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of occurring a little bit, right? Like MACD is making a higher low here.
Potentially, yeah.
The lower lows on SPY. So something to keep an eye out on. All right. Well, let's move to crypto. What do you see? What are you seeing in Bitcoin and Ethereum?
So crypto, I think that, crypto's having a really tough time right now getting over 40,000. If you threw a volume profile on this, you would see that most of the volume, has occurred in this kind of range here. right at that volume shelf. So it tried to break above this downtrend line. It's gotten denied twice up here in that 45,000 range. I think if we revisit it again, it might be a good opportunity to get short. And as this continues to kind of consolidate, maybe we're going to be forming some type of ascending triangle and get back above that resistance level. But this has a lot of room to fill out before it does potentially move higher. So I think that right now Bitcoin is range bound, and until it really gets above this 45,000 level, I think that you probably want to lean short, or maybe stay away from it altogether, because that's definitely going to be a tough level for it to get through, or at least it has been in the recent past. Ethereum, I think, has a little bit more potential. This is going all the way back to 2020, $500 a coin. You throw in the Fibonacci to the trough to the peak, and we've come back down and held that 0.618 Fibonacci level really well, and we're kind of bouncing around that 0.618 and 0.382. 0.618 is the most important Fibonacci level, 1.618, because that's actually the golden ratio. So whenever I see that, I think, okay, that's good. Price has respected that level. It's held it. As long as that's the case, I think you can remain bullish. I still think Ethereum long-term is in an uptrend, and, we're coming near the apex of this triangle. So, price is going to need to resolve itself in one direction or the other soon. So, all the practical applications aside, and, all the things that Ethereum is used for, I think just technically speaking, Ethereum kind of has this pattern of, big high, sells off, consolidates, breaks the trend, moves higher, does that over and over and over again. So probably, there's another move like that on our horizon, where if we get a break of the downtrend, we could definitely see 4,000, 4,500, 5,000, over the next year.
And then the same question, what negates this for you? I guess just kind of closing below that 0.618.
Yeah, certainly if we got below the 0.618, we lost 2,000. I think that that would be potentially bad.
Got it. How do you look at kind of the fundamentals of crypto? We talked about with SPY and the Qs and PE ratios and those sorts of things. I know that there's been some news just recently with Biden talking about crypto. Like, is this stuff that you're following, or are you just looking at the charts here?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I'm aware of what's going on. I'm a technical analyst, so I base everything I do based on the charts. But Bitcoin, I don't know that there's much practical application for it. Ethereum, on the other hand, I do think has a lot of fundamental value. OpenSea is like a great example of a blockchain in use, and people trading NFTs and things like that. Maybe NFTs are just kind of the start. Maybe we're going to start trading other types of commodities and things, in a digital asset realm. And Ethereum is going to kind of be, the blockchain that we do it on. Of course, there's other coins out there that can do, similar things, and they're continuing to develop more and more coins that are, better and quicker and use less energy, et cetera, et cetera. So there's going to be multiple winners. But, the reason why Bitcoin is as high as it is because it was one of the first. Right. So Ethereum kind of stepped up to the plate after that. Ethereum could be, at a Bitcoin level one day, and then, maybe a couple of the other ones that have come up behind it, are trading in the 1,000, 2,000 range that are, a couple dollars today. So you never know.
Are there any, just to go off script a little bit, are there any that you're looking at?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you can see my watch list here. These are some of the main coins that I look at. Matic, I think, is interesting. Gala, which I don't think I have on this list. That's another interesting one. GALA. Of course, Sand, and Luna, I think. Well, man, talk about the move that Luna had. That was a crazy rip.
Yeah.
I think that those are all really interesting. And what was the other one that I liked? Mana and Sand. Those are the two that have to do, with Decentraland and Metaverse, exactly.
Cool. Yeah. I know quite a few people that are slowly building stockpiles of both of those. So Interesting that you highlight them. Well, right
Yeah.
on. This has been a great overview of the general markets. Let's jump into like kind of more singular plays, maybe stuff that you might be looking at for, I mean, it's almost Friday, so maybe stuff you're looking at for next week.
Yeah, of course. So let's jump over to Apple, which I think is a good stock to look at. And let me start actually with the weekly. So looking at the weekly, we'll go to the 50 here. You can see that price has been consolidating in these triangles, breaks higher, triangle, breaks higher. And at the same time, this trend line kind of really nicely lines up with the 50-week SMA. So I think that, this is an uptrend. It's clearly an uptrend. And as long as price can hold this trend line, then I think that you should, continue to look for price to continue higher. Obviously this has a little bit more range to probably fill in. But on the offhand, if this does sell off, if Apple loses this trend line, closes below the 50 SMA, I certainly would think that this would continue lower and maybe retest some of these, prior highs. Like I can throw one on here. This was kind of a big level for Apple to get through the 136, 137 range. You can see that once it did, it got a big thrust higher, and then it eventually came back down and it found support, and then it bounced and it keep moving up. That classic BRB that we're always looking for. So I think that if it did close below this trend line, this would be a good target. Maybe it's going to have a second BRB, but this is a really nice pattern regardless. It's really very well respecting the technicals, and it's a symmetrical triangle. And as we know, symmetrical triangles can go either direction. So this isn't necessarily a bullish chart or a bearish chart. We can identify that it's in an uptrend, but this can certainly go either direction. So I think Apple's a good one to watch. This will likely make a big move in either direction in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I would think. So definitely keep an eye on that one. And then another one that I've been watching is AMD. AMD took forever to get over $100. I don't know if you were trading it very actively when it was kind of in the 80s and 90s, and it seemed like eternity that this thing took to get through it. Finally, it did, and it really did, right? It got a huge move, big thrust over it, and then once again came back down, retested that level. That's your back up the truck spot right there. And look at that, beautiful move that occurred after that. So we've since come back down and kind of tested that level a couple times. Even this week, we traded down to, I think it got 99 and change, just under 100, and we got a nice bounce. So the question in my mind is AMD going to hold this level? I don't know. It certainly has in the past, so that may be a good, indicator that it might do it again. But regardless, I think that if AMD does come down here, and, that market, the SPY is able to kind of potentially break out of that wedge we were looking at, this might be a good spot to buy some AMD, kind of around $100 or so. You could put your stop just below it, which, has been a nice area of resistance in the past. So maybe there's going to be some support there as well if it kind of dips below. So I think AMD is a good one to watch. Another thought that I have is maybe, is this going to be a head and shoulder? Is this the right shoulder right here? Or maybe we haven't put it in yet. Maybe we'll get that bounce and kind of put it in. I'm not sure, but looking at the daily, you can definitely see really clearly, how many times, let me turn this off, how many times, this ticker has come down to this level and bounced and, put in a nice triangle. Maybe we're putting in another one right now. So AMD definitely an interesting one to watch, I think, right now.
Does the times that it's pulled back to that old support level, now that it's the first time, obviously that's a, like you said, back up the truck moment, and clearly it was a great opportunity. Now we've tested it again and tested it again. Does that like give you pause? Does that give you concern?
Well, that's a great point, and I know what you're getting at. And usually the market, will not hit resistance or support the third time. That's usually what I see. And maybe this is the first time, this is the second, this will be the third. I don't know, maybe you can count this as the first, the second, and the third, but certainly just like everything else, it's in a downtrend. So you would think maybe this is going to continue lower, but my point is you have a good risk reward here if it, does produce a bounce. Like even just, the other day, you could have bought it down here at 100, had a nice trade up to 110, 111 or so. So my thinking is, at least the way I've been approaching this market is that it's a day trader's market. It's a scalper's market. You got to be in, you got to be out. Holding a swing in this market, I think can be difficult because you have so much back and forth and up and down, and it's easy to get shaken out of a position. So me personally, I'm reducing my position size. I'm pretty much trying to be in all cash by the close and taking profits a little bit quicker than normal because even just intraday, we have so much crazy volatility, that you can easily, see your profits go to nothing if you hold for too long.
Absolutely. Yeah. Even just a couple minutes, everything can change.
Yep.
Can we talk through real quickly before we move on to another name? Can we talk through like your mental process to either go long or short on this name? What do you need to see to get you in a position?
Sure. So, I mean, my favorite trade is going to be, I short at resistance and I long at support. I'm an options trader, so that would involve puts and calls. Pretty much, like I said, if AMD comes down to this 100 level and holds, I think that's a good opportunity to get some calls. If it comes up to this downtrend line again and it's not able to get through and kind of starts to roll back over, then I think that's a good opportunity to get short. You can obviously time it really well and short this top tick, but for me, when I see a big move come up to resistance, instead of shorting it right there, which you may be right, but you could also definitely be wrong and it keeps moving higher. What I prefer is to kind of wait for that confirmation that it is going to hit resistance. So once it rolls back over, as soon as it takes out that low, and I'll put a line on it right there, that's going to be your short right there once it takes out that daily low, the prior day's low. So that's where I'd be getting short 119 or so and try and trade it all the way back down again. And you can also see the next day it moved back up. So again, if you held your puts, you're getting stopped out. But if you took profits and you waited for this move to come back up, there's another short opportunity right there because it's just retesting that breakdown level. And then look at the nice move that it produced following that. So right. Again, I think you got to be nimble. And I think you really got to pick your spots carefully because this market, is so unpredictable from one day to the next.
What do you need for confirmation? Do you need the candle to close or do you just need price to get to a particular point?
So once it gets to this 119.20 or whatever the case may be, when it, that's my support level. If price breaks through that, then I'm going to be bearish. Once that happens, I look to see, how price responds on a lower time frame chart. So I'll look at the 5-minute, I'll look at the 15-minute, and I'll kind of see, is it going to just be a fake out? Is it going to, just go through that price level really quickly and then come right back out? Sorry, I lost my line here, I guess. Basically, what I'm looking for is, maybe another BRB on a lower time frame where price comes down and then tries to reclaim that level and fails, then that would be a good opportunity to get short. But, the more confirmation you can have, the better. I've seen so many times, price will move through support or resistance and then just come right back. It'll be a fake out. I've seen that happen so many times this year. It's almost like they're just trying to fake people out and fish stops and make our lives really difficult. So you have to be prepared for that and almost be a contrarian in that sense. It's almost been more profitable. Here's an example right here where, you thought maybe price was going to move higher and reclaim that level. Instead of getting long, that was the short, so it just goes to show that the contrarians are, the winners in this market, I think.
Just so everybody's clear, what does BRB mean?
BRB stands for breakout, retest, and bounce. I didn't come up with it, but I think it's a great turn of phrase, so I use it all the time. Another meaning would be right back, right? So basically, let me zoom out again. This was our breakout above our 100 resistance level. So we got the breakout, you got the retest, and you got the bounce, or you have the be right back to the highs, right? So that's where you're looking to load up right there on that retest bounce.
Got it. All right. So short below 100, where are we long on this name?
I think as soon as this gets above this downtrend line, it's off to the races.
Okay.
The more times that this kind of consolidates and holds this level, if it is able to push above it, maybe we're looking at like 110 or so. I think that would be a good chance to chase it a little higher. I'd be looking for, these pivot highs right here and try and trade it up to those ranges.
Cool. So we're kind of sitting on our hands and letting this thing play out a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Patience is the name of the game, as always.
Got it. All right. Let's move on to the next one.
Okay. So the next one I want to talk about is gold, GLD. I know a lot of people have been trading this, myself included. And why not? I mean, look at that thing. That's a beautiful chart. That's a parabolic move, just like you would see in a textbook. So this has been consolidating forever. I mean, you can look at this chart, just choppy, choppy, choppy. Finally, this thing starts to move up and breaks above this downtrend. And, we get a huge move higher out of it. And this is exciting on a daily level. Is it extended? Yes, absolutely. I think that price is going to need to settle and consolidate probably soon. But I think what's really exciting is when you look at the longer time frames. So we'll jump out to like the weekly. You can see it better here, the triangle that it was consolidating in. Huge move higher. This is, I don't know if this is the all-time high. It may be. I think it may be the all-time high. Certainly the recent high. And sure enough, price traded right up to it and kind of pulled back. So this would be, a level where I would want to be looking to take profits ahead of schedule, especially, with how parabolic this move is. I think that this is going to need to kind of settle before it moves any higher. But beautiful move that we saw the last couple of weeks. But my question is it done? Is there going to be more to come? And I think that a lot of people have been looking at this monthly chart of GLD, which is a very clear cup and handle, or a cup and pennant, whatever you want to call it. And when you connect these, it pretty well lines up with, we got the fake out, couldn't hold it. Maybe it was too far, too fast. Price needed to come back down and kind of consolidate, build energy again. And then now we're starting to move back above it. So, the measured move for these is going to be the depth of the cup. So we'll just quickly throw that on there, kind of measure it. So really loosely how high this thing may go if we do get that breakout. We're looking at potentially, 27, 30. That may take another 10 years or so. This has been consolidating since 2011, but that is going to be the measured move. So, maybe it's just getting started. I don't know.
What do you anticipate the Qs and SPY and the majors all looking like with gold at 273?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think that, maybe one of the reasons why gold is doing so well is also one of the reasons why SPY is not doing so well. Right. So, maybe if SPY does continue to roll over and, goes closer to that 400 level I'm kind of looking for, maybe we do see gold continue higher and, push up towards 200 or so. This is a super slow mover. It definitely takes its time. Well, you can see, it has bull runs. This was a big move. It took, 5-6 years to do it, but, it went from 42 to 184 or so. So that's a pretty big move. I think if you're patient, gold can definitely be a good trade.
So what's kind of the more immediate term play on this?
Well, I know it's not exciting, but I think the more immediate term plan is to kind of just wait. I personally would like to see it kind of take a breath, take a breather, just had a big move similar to like we saw right here. And what happened after that? We saw profit taking, sell off, hit resistance, pulled back, and it consolidated for a long time. So maybe we see a little bit more of that. If it's able to push through, I think that what would be really healthy is if it consolidated just above that level. So maybe we get another BRB in that sense. I don't think that this is going to go straight up in a straight line. I could be wrong, but to me, I think I would just watch it right now. But definitely one to keep on your radar over the next few months, years. This could potentially be an explosive setup.
Do you have any proxies for this that you would be trading that maybe might be more actionable in the near term?
That's a good question. I think that the miners are going to be a good way to get exposure to the gold market. GLD I like because it's literally just bullion. Gold is an interesting one. I know Buffett got involved in that. They're all catching a bid with gold, rising as it is. So gold is a good one. GDX is another ETF for the smaller cap miners. I think it's small miners. Maybe it's regular size. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But GDX is definitely a good one to watch as well. Yeah, there's a few different ways you can play gold right now.
Gotcha. Do you find any clearly this chart looks kind of quite different than just the GLD chart. How do you read kind of the differences between what you're seeing in the miners and what you're seeing in spot?
That's another good point. So, and that's the reason why I like GLD, because it is just gold, nothing else. These companies have earnings. They have, boards, they have directors, they have shareholders, they have people they need to make happy. Gold doesn't care about any of that. Gold has no earnings. It is literally just the price that the market is willing to pay. So when you're buying into an ETF like GDX, it's just a basket of all these different companies together. So there's other factors that go into this price movement. Same thing goes for gold, GOLD, that ticker that we were just looking at. This is a real company. They have earnings. So with GLD, you don't really have to worry about that. That's kind of why I prefer to trade that name when I'm just looking for exposure to gold and only gold.
Got it. And then I guess, kind of like what I've been asking, what negates clearly you're more bullish on gold here. What negates your bullishness?
Well, I've been pretty bullish right now. My bullishness is subsiding slightly just because of this parabolic move. I think that most likely this is going to probably start to roll over and consolidate. That is kind of the move that I'm looking for. Now, on the flip side, if it does continue higher, I mean, we saw what happened in nickel this week. Silver's starting to move as well. Commodities in general are ripping. So this could certainly continue higher. There's a lot of economic factors that go into why a commodity moves.
Right. What about shorter term targets on GLD? It could take, like you said, it could take years to get to that measured move point. Where could we, if we're looking for upside targets that are more reasonable, how would we find them? Or how would you find them?
I would just look at them based on like the prior resistance levels, like kind of in that high, which again, we got so close to in the past. Another thing that I'll do is I'll throw on the Fibonacci. So let me actually get rid of that line first. Fibonacci is great for finding targets, in my opinion. So I'll just basically start right at the bottom and go right to the top. And I think I have one actually turned off. There it is. So if we do decide to roll over, I think this would be a great spot to have for a target. And the nice thing about GLD is you can play puts. So if this does, kind of take out that, basically the open that we had today, if it does fill this gap and keep moving lower, I think 180 might be a nice target to the downside. If it holds right there, and starts to move back up, that'd be a good spot to start to look to get long and, see if we can, again, retest that high.
And would you play gold the same way that you would play the Qs or SPY or Apple or anything like that?
You mean like in terms of like an options position?
Yeah, in terms of an options position, obviously, options you have to deal with decay. So are you playing, and if historically gold is quite a slower mover, which then in theory you would want to maybe have longer dated options for gold than you would for SPY or Qs?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that with gold, I like to buy time, and I usually use a spread. So I'll usually use a debit spread, a vertical. My target, in the last couple of weeks was like 180. So I had some of the 175, 180s, 170, 185s. I was playing some of those spreads. And the nice thing about a vertical is, it kind of allows me a little bit more time to be patient because I'm at least short a little bit of premium. And, if it moves against me, it's not as quickly as it would be if I was, in a naked position. So definitely I like to buy time with this and use a vertical.
Okay, so you're never playing just directionally?
No, I do. I mean, it'll be a call vertical, so I'll be, I'll have a bullish bias, but I'll still always be, short the higher strike. So I'm at least, short some premium.
Got it. Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, this has been awesome. You want to move on to kind of the next round here? This lotto plays for tomorrow.
Yes. I'm actually really excited about this because I've
Cool.
never done like a live, lotto thing before. And I know a lot of people always have questions about lottos.
And actually, before we get started, if
Mhm.
anybody has any questions, anybody that's watching, I think we're going to have a little bit of time at the end to answer a few questions. So hit us up in the chat and hit us with your questions if you have them. We'll try and get to them.
Awesome. So, of course, naturally, we're going to start with Chewy, which is by far my favorite lotto trade of all time because for whatever reason, I don't know why, this thing loves to move on Fridays. It'll have 8, 9, 10% moves on Fridays. Today, it had a pretty decent size move, 7.7%. That's pretty big. But again, definitely one to keep an eye on for tomorrow. Another stock that I think is in a clear downtrend. It tried to break above this level, has failed, has failed a couple times in the past, and we just keep, taking out these support levels, and that produces the next leg lower. So just quickly taking off all the lines, you can kind of see that we're starting to form, somewhat of a descending triangle. Sorry. And in a downtrend, I'm going to look for that to likely continue lower. So I think overall, this is probably going to be, taking out the lows and continuing to flush lower. But in terms of tomorrow, what I'm always looking for in a lotto is, an immediate move, something that's going to happen the very next day. Because if it doesn't happen on Friday, what's the point? So what I like to do is, of course, first observe the daily chart and figure out where I believe there's going to be support and resistance, which obviously these kind of two candles where we bounce from, I think would be a support level. So that's going to be, in this case, what I'm targeting. And what I'm going to short is essentially just a break of this low of day candle that we had today. And I've got the levels here. Oops, clicked on the wrong button, on the lower time frames, which is what I execute on. I execute all my trades based on the 5 and 15 minute. So you can see that, price has taken out this uptrend and it's kind of consolidated in what looks like a bear flag. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, we're in a downtrend. Looks like we're in a descending triangle. On a lower time frame, we have a trend break and price is really coiling up. You can see that nice, even a little pennant, little bear pennant that's starting to form on the 15-minute chart. So tomorrow going in, if we do take out that low, I think that, your natural target's going to be right there. That's the trade that I'm thinking is going to happen. But of course, I don't have a crystal ball. Anything can happen. Chewy very well may break up to the upside again. And if it does, my long trigger is going to basically be this pivot point right here. And the reason is because this was all today. From the right of my cursor right now, this was all today. And you can see that price flushed down, and it made this high right on that level. And then it continued lower, it bounced, and then it failed to even touch that level. So to me, that's the new resistance level. Instead of taking something long right there, where it may run into resistance again at this spot, I'd rather just play it up to the next level. So as soon as it's able to go through this, then I think it's game on. Now, is it going to hit resistance up at this spot right here? It might. I think that, you're going to get, 75 cents maybe in a move, on a 0 DTE contract though, that can be profitable, right? Yep. If we buy the 40 call, even 75 cents, it might double. It might be up 75%. So just because this doesn't look like it has a ton of room to run, I still think that there's money to be made in either direction here, whichever way Chewy decides to go.
DTE, days to expiry, correct?
Yes, days to expiry. So 0 DTE, 0 days to expiration.
Got it. Right on. How do you, when you're buying options, I assume you're buying a lot, right? You're buying more than one. How are you scaling out? Or do you buy them all at the same time, sell them all at the same time? Are you scaling in, scaling out?
Sure.
What's that process like for you?
So basically, like, I have, a certain position size that I'm comfortable with on a Lotto Friday. which is smaller than a normal position size, because these trades are way more risky. They're way more likely to go to zero, and they can move against you a lot quicker. So, basically I put in the amount of capital that I'm comfortable with, based on my risk parameters. Yes, it is usually more than one contract. And what I will do is, I basically will buy in a half position, maybe 3/4 of a position, when I'm, thinking that, price is right at that right spot. I give it a little bit of wiggle room to kind of move against me before I, get out of it. But I really want to see, price confirm my thesis before I add any more. And then maybe, as I'm correct, I'll add a few more, as price is moving the direction that, I hope that it would. And then as that's happening, I will start to scale out. So, once we get like an initial thrust, we get a big move, big pop, I'll take off a quarter, I'll take off a third, and then I'll push my stop on the remainder. I mean, with lottos, you have to be careful because you can get stopped out really quickly. I'm here sitting at my computer looking at the screens the entire time. I look at every tick. So I'm watching to see, when price moves against me, when I need to get out. So I have the luxury of not using a hard stop on Lotto Fridays. I know not everyone's going to be able to do that, and that's fine. If you want to use a hard stop, I do that with most of my normal positions. The other thinking is, only invest how much you're comfortable with losing. So, if you're okay with losing $200, that's the full size of your position, if you can't watch it super closely. But that's a whole nother topic, how to use stop losses. We won't get into that.
Right.
But yeah, what I'll do is if the trade is working for me, is I will scale some out and push a stop along the way.
How did you figure out the Friday thing for Chewy?
I don't know. I think it was actually just like trial and error. I have like a big watch list of stocks that I look at daily, and multiple times a day. And I think Chewy just made it on the list. One of these Lotto Fridays. I've been doing these things for a while now, a year or two, and just noticed like Chewy just tended to be one of those big movers on a Friday, and so it just kind of became like the classic Lotto Friday trade. What do they call it? Like when you get like the jersey hung in the arena. That's what Chewy is, for Lotto Friday. It's always going to be there in my mind.
Interesting. I've never noticed that. I've never heard that about Chewy. It'd be interesting to pull up the seasonality widget and see how it tends to perform on Fridays.
That is a great idea.
Yeah.
I can't believe I didn't think of that. I'm going to definitely do that. Thank you for bringing that up.
Well, let's do it right now. Click on the sidebar, pull up the widget. Let's see. Because now I'm curious too. Yeah, seasonality. And then say done, yeah. And then where it says monthly down bottom left-hand corner, change that to daily. Yeah. There you go. It's the worst performing day of the week. Interesting.
Very interesting. That's not what I would have expected. So that's completely negating everything that I said. Well, actually, it may not be, because I play this to the downside all the time. So,
right.
Even if it was at 20%, maybe that would still be supportive that it has big moves to the downside.
Right.
So maybe that is interesting.
One other thing that I notice on these smaller time frames, aside from MACD, I don't see any other indicators. Are you using moving averages or anything like that on these smaller time frames? Or are you just using trend lines and levels?
So I'm super old school, and I like my charts really clean. With the lower time frames, I pretty much just use VWAP and price and volume, and that's it. I have MACD up, all the time basically, but truthfully, I don't really look at it a lot for the lower time frame candles. For me, it's all about price and VWAP and volume.
Okay, cool. And then
VWAP
I noticed
is great. VWAP continues to impress me with how much price will truly respect it as support and resistance. That's definitely a good indicator, I think, to use on lower time frames.
Are you using just standard VWAP, or are you using an anchored version?
I just use the standard VWAP.
Okay, cool. And then I also notice you have unusual options up.
Yes.
How would you be using that in this scenario? Like, would you be looking to see if any premium came in for tomorrow?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And it looks like there is some.
Yeah, you can see a ton of these 55 puts expiring tomorrow. which I saw that earlier, which is interesting. 55, right? It's pretty deep in the money.
It is.
You've got some 46 and some 40s. Anything that, is going to, for me, I trade basically at the money. So if this were to move higher, I'd be, in the 40 call. If this moves lower, I'm going to be in the 37 put. Keep it pretty simple. And there's a reason for that, which I can explain later too. But yeah, if I'm seeing, a lot of activity on the ask, continuing to put money in and at the money puts either tomorrow or next week's expiration, that's going to give me like extra confirmation that, potentially price is going to keep continuing lower. And, of course, people always say, go against the herd, the herd's usually wrong. There is definitely some truth to that. But just thinking about it, like from a fundamental perspective, if there's a ton of puts being purchased on the open market, the market maker on the back end has to basically short the stock in order to hedge that position. And when you short a stock, that puts downward pressure on it. So if you're getting just tons and tons and tons of puts, people are buying them, that's going to put downward pressure on a stock. And the opposite goes for calls. Market maker has to hedge a short call by buying the stock. That's the easiest way for them to do it. So, the options market definitely will move price to a certain degree.
Because I don't want to forget, can you go over why you're going to buy a 37 put when price is at 37, why you're going to buy a 40 call when price is at 40?
Yes, definitely. And there's a great feature in Thinkorswim that I use where you can plot the option. And I've done this a lot, and I've looked to see, how price moves, especially on days that the option expires. And let's say you buy the 35 put, which, people would think, fives and tens, those are going to be the highest volume. This is going to have the highest open interest probably. If you buy that 35 put, price can move in your direction, and that put can still go to zero because it literally is going to be zero if it expires out of the money at the end of the day. So for me, that's just way too much of a risk. This put maybe would cost you 2 cents or something like that. And yeah, if it quickly moved to 36, let's just say, for example, that put may go from 2 cents to 8 cents or 10 cents, and you're going to have a huge percentage return. You're going to have a 800, 400%, crazy return. And that's great, but it's going to happen, not very frequently. Whereas, if you buy the 37 put, yeah, you're out of the money, but if you do get the move right, that's probably going to be at the money or slightly in the money, fairly quickly, certainly a lot quicker than the 35 put would be. So my goal is to always get in the money as quickly as possible. And there's multiple reasons for that as well, theta being a big one. But the closer I buy to the money, you're going to have a higher delta. Theta is going to move against you more slowly if you get the move correct, because not to get too much into the weeds, but if you look at an options chain, the at the money strike, doesn't matter the expiration, is always going to have the highest theta. So if you buy an at the money put, as price moves farther and farther in the money, that theta actually will decrease. Even though it's getting closer to expiration, just the way the options chain works, it will be, a lower theta. Whereas if you buy something farther out, as price is moving closer and closer to that strike, the theta is increasing. So, as an options trader, if I'm long, theta is always my enemy. So I'm, just trying to stay one step ahead of it.
Got it. Yeah. And I guess the other thing to consider, because I've definitely been the guy buying the 36s at 39, right? On the day of expiry. And
Sure.
the thing to think about is, yes, it can go 2 cents to 8 cents, but every minute that ticks by, you've got less and less people who are willing to take that risk. So who are you selling to when it gets to 8? If you buy however many you buy at 2, once it's at 8, are there enough buyers to absorb what you have left to sell, even at 8? So you might be able to sell some of them at 8, but then by the time you're able to sell all of them, it's back to 2 again. So that's something to kind of consider as well.
100%. You're right. You're likely going to have to just market order out of it. They're going to buy it back from you for 3 cents and then offer it again at 8. That's the way they work. That's a great point as well. And, getting back to like what I was saying about plotting these options, plot the 35 put and the 37 put and look at, what they did as price moved lower, at the end of the day tomorrow, whatever the case may be. You'll see that 35 put may get a little spike, but then it'll just flatten out the rest of the day. Whereas, the 37 put or even maybe the 36 put, depending on how big the move is, it will continue to go up as long as that delta is moving in its direction, as long as that delta is increasing.
Right. All right. So to recap, on Chewy, we are short below 37. We are 37.73. We are long above 39.76. Yeah.
That's correct.
All right. Let's jump to the next one.
Okay. The next one is the fan favorite, or at least the prior fan favorite. I don't know how many people still like this stock after what they did to it, the massacre that took place in Palantir. But I think we got a potentially interesting setup here. So you can see on a lower time frame, we've got a nice downtrend break, confirmed resistance, and then we got a nice push above it. Today, we actually pulled back and found support just above that level. So that's kind of maybe going to be a BRB. That's going to be our retest of the breakout level. And sure enough, price rose right back up it. So I'm thinking that if Palantir can get above 1202, this is going to be a great long setup. That is my bias, quote unquote, as long as the market doesn't roll over. I think that this could continue higher. And even looking at it on a more zoomed in view, you've got a nice ascending triangle. Maybe it's a cup. There's a lot of reasons I think to be bullish on this chart right now. And of course, on the flip side, if it isn't able to hold above that downtrend, rolls back over, there may be more pain ahead. Because when you look at it on the daily chart, you can certainly see that it's in a downtrend. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But with Lotto Fridays, we're looking for quick one-day moves. Doesn't matter to me if this is in a downtrend. To me, that looks like maybe it's going to be a little bull flag that's starting to maybe pop higher. Maybe we kind of test this little gap that we have not filled in here. So that's my thinking with Palantir tomorrow.
Okay, so it looks like if we go back to that short term or that smaller time frame, looks like gain 12. We're looking for what, 12 and a half, 13, something in that world?
Yeah.
What
Yeah. I think this kind of prior swing high right here, you said it right on the money, 12 and a half would be a good target. You have another little one, just 20 cents or so higher above that. If we can clear this level, which I don't know what that would take. I mean, Palantir doesn't really seem to move like it used to, but
Right.
if for some reason it is able to get above it, there's a big gap to fill right there, all the way up to 13.90, 14 and change or so. Again, I don't expect that to happen, but I think that 12 and a half would be a logical target to go for. And if you're in the 12 call or the 12 and a half call or whatever you decide, that can be a really profitable move. 50 cents on a $12 stock can be pretty good.
For sure. And then we're short below 11.27.
Yep, short below 11.27.
And your target is maybe what, 10.75, somewhere thereabouts. So 50 cents either direction is what you're looking at.
Yeah, my next target, whether it be calls or puts, is going to be the next level that price kind of reversed from. So on the upside, I'd be looking for 12.50, like you said, and on the downside, looking for about 10.75. So you've got 50 cents kind of in either direction that this thing could move. I think it could be good for a quick scalp. Could easily be 75, 100% winner if it moved quickly enough.
Yeah. And then, on the total off chance that you break out of the previous highs and into the gap, I mean, I have enough experience to know that without some sort of major move there, or some sort of like maybe, what would you be looking for to actually to believe that that's going to happen? You'd be probably looking for what, like major volume, maybe some news. Like that's not going to happen unless something big occurs with the individual name, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the only other thing I can think of would just be like a ton of options flow, a lot of calls being purchased could definitely make that happen. It's one of those stocks that used to have big momentum moves. Like Roku is another name that used to have big momentum moves. You'd look at it at 10 a.m. and it'd be up $12 and you'd think, oh man, this thing's done. And then it's up $27 by the end of the day. It just keeps going and going and going. Right. So Palantir used to trade like that. And, maybe there's a day on its horizon where it does again. But a lot of those moves, I think, occurred because of the options market, just continuous buying in calls would just propel this thing higher. So I would definitely be watching the chain here and seeing these sweeps. As you can see, it looks like there was a lot of calls purchased, and there is definitely some interest to the upside. So, we may be on the right side there.
What's your what are you looking for confirmation wise to hit a long or a short on a daily expiry? Do you need that 15-minute candle to close above or below a level, or as soon as price gets above or below a level, you're buying?
So it depends. Most of the time I look at a 5-minute candle. I'm just using the 15-minute now because it's easy.
Okay.
And kind of just summarizes everything, but I can I can make it a 5-minute just to show you really quickly. What will determine for me a confirmation to get in? Let's say our breakout level is, roughly right there. I would want to see price move above it and then kind of check back and hold that level. I don't really want to buy that first move higher unless, now this is the caveat, unless price hovers just below it, say for 20, 30, 40 minutes, does nothing, just chops kind of right in this range, just below it, then I might buy that first breakout candle, because a lot of the time when that happens, everyone's stop will get hit that was short, and you get the momentum traders like myself that jump in, and then you can get a nice move higher. So when that does happen, I'll be looking to take profits on that first rip and then potentially buy back in on the dip if we get it. Now, if price, was, let's say, we open lower tomorrow or whatever, and price is kind of consolidating in this range, maybe down there, and we get a big move up, I'm never, ever going to buy that first candle higher because it's so extended from this base, right? The market, like Jake says all the time, is a fractal. I think that's a great way of thinking about it. So when you have bases on daily timeframes, you're also going to have a base on lower timeframes as well. So price needs like a trampoline, like a launch pad, something to kind of move away from and build momentum from. So that's what consolidations are. So if your consolidation is much closer to your resistance level, I think that you can be okay buying that first initial break above it. But if it's lower down here, I think you got to wait for another consolidation, maybe just above it, again, maybe just below it, and then kind of buy that move out of it. But a 5-minute candle close above it, if we have a consolidation around that range, that would be enough for me.
Got it. Are you setting stops at all, or are you kind of manually managing?
Did you say stops?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I said, because I'm watching every tick, I don't use a hard stop on LOTAs just
Okay.
because, sometimes you can get a crazy wick. It'll come right back.
Right.
If you had a hard stop in, it'll take you out. It's so annoying. It's happened to myself, and I'm sure every listener on here tonight. It's really frustrating. So personally, I prefer to just watch the price. Maybe I'll have a stop, way out of the way, just so it's ready. And then once, price hopefully does move in my direction, I can kind of just push it up. But certainly with LOTAs, I give them a little bit more room in terms of the stop, and I try and just watch them really closely.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that makes total sense. All right, let's jump to the next one.
Okay. So the last one I wanted to look at was TTD, the trader's desk. And, I'm going to be completely transparent. I have no idea what this company does. I won't be like the guy on CNBC, trying to act like I don't hear you. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know what this company does. All I know is the chart. And to me, this chart looks pretty bearish. Let me start actually with the daily. So you've got this rising wedge, bear flag, whatever you want to call it, that broke down. And you've got 3 kind of days of consolidation, which to me looks kind of like it's starting to form a flag. And I think that, you've got MACD moving lower, you've got that cross below, that big, push lower. Volume actually picked up the next day to confirm the selling. And, we're kind of just holding in this level. So a lot of the time when you see a big breakdown from a base like this, price will consolidate in some sort of flag or pennant or whatever it may be. And if you miss this initial breakdown, this can be a good opportunity to get short. So looking at it on that lower time frame again, you can see that price is kind of just hovering. It's taking its breath. It's getting ready to make the next move. Could this move higher? if the market moves up, yes, it definitely could and retest this level. And this one actually has a little more room to move up before it hits that downtrend than Chewy did. But because we've got a trend line break, we've got a somewhat of a flag pennant forming, I would be looking for this to continue lower. And not only because of the price action do I feel that way, but also because there was a ton of activity in the 60, the 50, the 61 put expiring tomorrow. Very unusual. I think there was something like 12,000 contracts traded expiring tomorrow, which is definitely unusual for this name. So do they know something? Maybe, maybe not. But to me, that's just like an extra tidbit of information that I can use. And I can say, okay, I'm bearish on this chart. Looking at the flow, it definitely looks bearish to me. What side do I want to be on? I want to be on the side, of the bears. So that's the kind of the way I look at it.
Got it. So what's the play? We're going short 61.60 or
Yep.
60.61 rather. Sorry.
Yep. We're going short below 60.61. And in the off chance that we get the bounce and it moves out of this consolidation to the upside, maybe it needs to retest the bottom of that breakout level. Certainly a possibility. I would look for a long at 67.40. And to touch on kind of what we were speaking about earlier in terms of strikes, with this one, I think you're fine getting the 68 call. That's personally how I'm going to be playing this. The 68 call, it's only 60 cents out of the money. But in this case, the 60 put would also make sense. But because there's been so much activity on that 61 put, you got to wonder, why did they do that? Why didn't they just go with the 60 put? Well, at the very least, I know there's going to be better liquidity in that strike. So for me, I'm going to actually go a little in the money, and I'm going to buy that 61 put if we do push below the breakdown level here at 60.61. It's going to have a better delta. Again, I'm avoiding some theta, and I know that they're already in that. So, as I'm looking to take profits, maybe they're going to buy a little from me, that kind of thing.
Got it. And what's your target?
That's a good question, because there really hasn't been a pivot low very recently in this name. Other than, I think, maybe we see that 55 range, but before we get there, I think this probably would be a better target, this pivot low, 57.82 or so. And then if we do get that chance, to move higher, I think the underbelly, the downside, the underside of this, breakdown level would be my upside target. So kind of maybe in this 70 range, 72 range, something like that.
Got it. And so for the short and same idea, right? We're not buying the second it hits that 60.61 level. We're going to let it break down below that level and come back and retest and fail before we start getting short, right?
Yeah, ideally, yeah. Let me see if I can show you a good example, because I did that with the Qs today. I was short the Qs. Pull it up on a lower time frame. So I was looking for, this is all of Wednesday. This was today, Thursday. I was looking for a break to the lows today for a short opportunity. So just kind of connecting these levels here. This was our opening price, and we kind of looked like we were going to move up. We filled in about half of that overnight gap, which is characteristic a lot of the time of a gap down before they roll it over again. And you can see every single rally is getting sold and sold and sold. So as soon as price took out that low a day, that's when I'm, queuing in. Okay, this is a trade. I need to get ready to get my entry. This is where I got short right here. So I waited for that retest. This actually lined up perfectly with that VWAP as well. So I had multiple, things that I was looking at to act as resistance. And this was my short spot right there. And you can see that it produced a nice move lower. I got in the 325s, scaled out along the way, and, they expired tomorrow. So it was a nice little return, because those contracts will move pretty quickly. So yeah, that's a great example right there of an intraday BRB.
Awesome. Yeah, that's exactly what I would be looking for myself.
And you even had a second opportunity right there to short it again. Sorry to cut you off.
No, it's okay. You're totally right. So we've gone past the hour here, man. This has been awesome. And I've been kind of sprinkling in questions from the audience along the way.
Oh, good.
How are you feeling? Do you want to keep jamming? Are you
Yeah, totally.
do
I'm
you want
happy
to
to.
look at a few other charts?
Yeah, I'm happy to field some more questions or look at some charts. Let's do
Let's
it.
look at oil because we haven't talked oil yet. Oil's been crazy. Maybe like CVX.
Yeah, man, I got to tell you, oil has been just like gold. It's had a crazy run.
Yep.
What an absolutely beautiful breakout. To me, this is way too extended to get involved for anything long term. I think that the move was definitely to buy like that little bull flag breakout that occurred right there. Um, personally think that this is getting a little long in the tooth, but absolutely beautiful move. Another good one, of course, was Exxon, which kind of started to roll over a little bit. You can see I was trading this earlier in the past week, throwing my Fibonacci's on for some targets up here.
Right.
But yeah, oil has had a crazy, crazy move. Halliburton's another one. Again, paying a lot of respect to those Fibonacci's, but to me, I don't know. It looks like it's getting a little extended, so I don't know that I'd be putting a ton of fresh new money, maybe for a day trade, but that's about it.
Right. What do you think about? Let's see. FOMC, OPEX next week. Any opinions on either of those events?
Well, I think we kind of know the playbook of the Feds. I think that, they're pricing in 6 to 7 hikes. I think Powell basically made it pretty clear that it's going to be a quarter point hike, not the 50 basis points like everyone's been fearing. So I think that we kind of have an idea of what's going to happen there. So as far as OPEC, I'm certainly not an expert in that sense, so I won't
Right.
speak to it. Um, there's much more intelligent economic people than myself. I'm just a simple chartist and options flow guy, so I'll just stick to what I know.
Right on. What about pre-market? I haven't seen any pre-market data on any of these charts. Do you look at that action? Do you care what's going on pre-market?
Okay, so that's another good point, and I get asked that a lot as well. Maybe this is going to sound crazy to a lot of people, but I really don't look at pre-market. Of course, first thing I do in the morning when I wake up is check the futures. I look and see where prices are at. But in terms of like charting, I don't really look at it very much. I'll look at I have certain levels where, I'll see the pre-market high and the pre-market low, but I will not, base my charting analysis upon it. And simply because it's way easier for someone to move price pre-market, aftermarket than it is during the normal trading hours. I think what occurs in a normal trading hour, it has way more weight than anything that happens in a pre-market. So, on my charts, I don't even have it up. I don't even look at it.
Awesome. Yeah, I've always kind of taken it to be a totally different session. You trade pre-market or you trade regular market hours, and
Exactly.
oil and water don't really mix the two.
Exactly.
Yeah, cool. Right on, man. Well, this has been so awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time, spending some time with us, going over your ideas, giving us some super actionable trades for tomorrow. I'm gonna definitely be keeping my eye on TTD. That's the one that caught my eye for tomorrow. So
Yeah, I agree. That's one of my favorites as well. Well, I wish you good luck tomorrow, and thank you everyone for tuning in and listening. And this was a lot of fun and way overdue. I love doing these things with you guys, and I got nothing but love for TrendSpider. I think it's a great software, and the fact that you guys have now added the options, that's just like music to my ears because I'm all about that stuff as well.
awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on, and we'll definitely have to do it again. For everybody watching, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. We've got a bunch of cool stuff planned over the next weeks with Twitter Spaces, more live chart review events. So please keep your eyes on us, and have a great evening. Have a great Friday. Trade them well, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Jason. Take care, guys.
All right, brother. Take care.